Good afternoon. Welcome. I know that we're all just set up. I appreciate your coming to make sure that you're all ready. I'm going to go on mute as well, but I'm Kristen C. I'll be hosting all of you this afternoon. So thank you for coming. I'm just going to make sure we're all set up. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for the 2020 PhD Program Information Session at the University of South Carolina's College of Social Work. My name is Kristen C. I'm the Interim Doctoral Coordinator and a faculty member here at the college. I would like for us to start off by allowing Dean Pittner to welcome you here to the college.
Thank you, Kristen. And definitely I want to say good afternoon to everyone and welcome to this information session. So I know that I joined Kristen in saying that we are excited that you are all interested in our doctoral program. And in our College of Social Work, we just place a high value on doctoral education and on doctoral students. So you may not know your MSW program, they admit a lot of students. For the doctoral program, we only admit a small number and our class sizes are really small. So this gives us an opportunity to work very closely with each student. But most importantly for you, doctoral education gives you an opportunity to become a trained expert in a specific area, and our faculty will help you become that trained expert. And that's the exciting part about doctoral education. So use this information session to learn about our program. But always, for me, I always say that you should ask any and every question that you have, because I want you to walk away being very informed. And we all want you to apply to our program, but ask those relevant questions so that we can help you as you think about applying to the program. Again, I want to thank you for your interest in our program. And again, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dean Pittner, for joining us and welcoming everyone here. We are very excited to have you here with us today, prospective students, and for those of you who are at various stages of considering a doctoral program in social work. So we're going to cover some questions specific to the program, questions specific to those of you who are trying to decide if doctoral studies and a PhD are right for you. And I know sometimes it can really help to know who you're speaking with. So let me give you a little bit of a background on me before we get started. My name's Kristen C. This is my 7th year with the faculty here at the College of Social Work. I'm the interim doctoral coordinator and also an associate professor here at the college. My research focuses on child welfare and child well-being overall, children's health, and parenting as well. So I used to investigate child maltreatment. That's what I did before I went back to get my PhD. And I recognized that that was not going to be, that we didn't have the strongest interventions to promote the outcomes for families that I wanted to see as a social worker. And so I had the chance to go back and get a PhD, and that was an experience that was profoundly beneficial to me and gave me the skills that I needed to research. My passion around my own doctoral education, about working with our doctoral students, is what encouraged me to serve as the interim doctoral coordinator. And I feel really strongly that a doctoral experience is something you only do once, and you want it to be, you want it to really be a growth experience for you. So I manage many grants. I manage 3 grants right now. I'm the PI, or the principal investigator, on those from several different funding sources, as well as over our doctoral program this year. And I accepted that because I enjoy getting to know our students. I enjoy doctoral education, and I have worked with many students and really enjoy that. So please reach out to me with questions. I'm here for you, and I want to get to know you and help you find the right fit for your own doctoral experience. So let's talk a little bit now about the program. To give you an idea of what we'll be doing today, you'll be talking with me and have an opportunity to ask questions between now and 1:45. From 1:45 to 2:30, we will have a faculty session where a sample of our professors will be coming to talk with you about their research and how they work with doctoral students. And then from 2:30 to 3 o'clock, we will have our doctoral students, a panel of them will be coming forward. And you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of them, to ask any sort of remaining questions you might have at that point of our program. And then I will tell you about some upcoming opportunities that you can participate in to learn more about the college. All right, so the first thing to make sure that we've addressed is why someone would want to get a PhD in social work. You're obviously intrigued, but we don't want to overlook that. And then why here at the University of South Carolina? So the purpose of a social work PhD is to prepare students to be scholars who function as stewards of the discipline. So we really see you as being the heart and the future of social work academia. You're going to improve the art and science of social work by generating, disseminating, and conserving the knowledge that informs and transforms professional practice. So this is really a knowledge generating degree, PhD, the PhD in social work. Now, why social work? Social work is a discipline that has a broad range of interests focused on social justice and improving the lives of families, individuals, and communities. And within that, there is a range and a scope that's difficult to replicate in another field around social justice. So social work brings together many different disciplines. And a few years ago, the Society for Social Work and Research took the lead on developing grand challenges for social work. And there were 12 main domains there that focused on these different areas. And you can see that they encompass quite a range of addressing health, violence, and many of the social justice issues within our field. So this is one way of conceptualizing what, as a field of social work, we want to see moving forward, and how our research we want to shape the field. Within here at the College of Social Work, our program aims to develop scholars who generate and disseminate new knowledge, to drive social change, and to create a more equitable, just, and inclusive society. Sometimes I come across students who are still trying to decide between a PhD and a DSW program. And I think it's important to understand the distinctions. We do not offer a DSW program here at the University of South Carolina's College of Social Work, but we do offer a PhD program. And you want to make that decision thoughtfully ahead of time. A PhD program is focused on knowledge creation. We provide coursework on theory, research methods, and we're trying to develop the skills that are necessary to create new knowledge. And this leads individuals in our program to seek out research careers focused on academic tenure track and research faculty positions, or other types of professional researchers. For example, those who go into government work or work at research centers, or even with the military. However, these same students that we train to have a research background, many of them go on to be excellent teachers. And our program really thinks that teaching is a key value of the profession, and we want to make sure that you not only are an excellent researcher, but you are a great teacher. And that is a value that we hold among our faculty ourselves. So not just for our students, that's something that we also value as faculty and engage in several steps to ensure that. So if you're interested in teaching and research, this might be the program for you. But you don't want to overlook that research is a key piece of it, because the coursework and the deliverables for obtaining a PhD are research-based. The dissertation is a research-based piece, and so that is finding a passion around research and enjoying that is going to be an important step towards success. On the other hand, there is the DSW program, which is really the development of advanced clinical or macro practice skills. And DSWs end up oftentimes applying for academic clinical teaching faculty positions, or even go out and do additional professional social work in the field, including advanced practice or serving as administrative leaders. If you're looking more for a DSW program, I can send you a link where you can look at DSW programs nationally and begin feeling that out as well. We want to make sure that you find the right path for you. And while the PhD program is a great path for many and it allows you the opportunities for research and teaching, it is definitely a research degree. So we prepare social work students in the following ways, and these are aspects of our program that are really strengths. We as a college, we nurture each student's unique research interests. And at face value, that seems like, of course you do. But you, as you begin exploring other programs, and for many of you who are considering various options nationally, regionally, most programs are looking for a match, if you will, between your research interests, which might be quite unique, and a faculty member at the college. And so sometimes when you're embarking on something that is new or novel, or you're looking for that match, it can be difficult. We really have had success nurturing students' unique interests by taking a triangulation approach, if you will, of taking several faculty whose areas surround that student and are able to build them up to create a strong dissertation, strong foundational work in that area. And so we do that through our core curriculum, our mentored research experiences, and then our individualized program of study, which allows for 5 different elective options across the course of study. We also engage in students in learning that spans across disciplines, and this allows us to address complex and pressing human and societal problems. Our faculty work with faculty across the campus and across the nation, if not the world, in a wide variety of disciplines. Here at the college, we have faculty with expertise in anthropology or degrees in anthropology and sociology, as well as faculty who collaborate with a wide range of other colleges and programs here at the university. For example, we have faculty who collaborate with nursing and medical, the medical school. I have a project where I'm collaborating with 2 professors in computer science to create a platform for children in foster care. And so we have connections to facilitate and think about your work as it connects to other disciplines in your broad path towards your expertise area. We also want students to develop a broad set of methodological skills. There are programs that focus primarily on quantitative methods, and we see ourselves as wanting to prepare you to do the work to answer the questions that you need to answer. So methods should really be questions focused, and that's why it's hard at the beginning to say, well, I definitely want to do a quantitative project, or I definitely want to do a qualitative project. And you might be right. You might know exactly what's right for you. However, many students aren't sure yet what the methodology is that they want to use for their dissertation. And for those students, what we offer for all of our students is a base of methods, from quantitative to qualitative, and then options for community engaged methods as well. Because sometimes when you go into research at the beginning, you're pretty sure you're going to go in one direction, but the question itself guides the methodology. And so it's important for all of us to have a base in quantitative, qualitative approaches, and then as well as being able to understand community engaged approaches. And we require quantitative and qualitative coursework to prepare you for the strongest research skills that you'll need in the future. We also see ourselves as a community that engages in students' development and wants to promote your career goals through a community that cares about your well-being. We want to sustain long-term relationships with your faculty mentor. So we're looking for a connection there that will foster growth in your research area, but also be there to support you. And so that's something that you work with the doctoral coordinator to feel out that fit. When you come in as a doctoral student in your first year, you're assigned 2 mentors, and that gives you some options, an academic mentor and a research mentor, to explore that fit based on your topical area, as well as connect with one faculty member. You also regularly meet with the doctoral coordinator in a seminar course, and so you're already having regular interactions with several of our faculty right from the beginning, who may end up, and oftentimes one or more of those people do end up directly on your committee. We also want prepare students with hands-on opportunities to develop skills through our graduate research assistantships, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then we provide funding that allows students to really focus on scholarship. And I'll be coming back to talk more about funding. So our program is a full-time program that where classes are taken 2 to 3 days a week, depending on your particular schedule. The GRA, which stands for Graduate Research Assistantship, occurs 2 days a week. And there are 2 years of required coursework in our program. So what does that look like for those 2 years? It really looks like full-time study in both the fall and the spring semesters of those 2 years. Summers are different, and I'm happy to talk a bit more about what students do during summers, but there is not required coursework during the summer. The core curriculum is a 3-semester theory sequence. So that takes place in your first 3 semesters, the fall and spring of your first year, and typically the fall of your second year. There's also a 2-semester course research method sequence, and then a 2-semester statistics sequence. So as we were talking about from the beginning, this is really a research-based. We're preparing you to be a researcher, to be an independent researcher who collaborates with teams and who is able to have all the research skills that you need to create new knowledge. So those theory and research methods and statistics courses are the base of what you would need to get started with that. We, again, use quantitative and qualitative methods and require courses in both of these methodologies. And then we offer professional development seminars. We actually require them in your first and second year. This is a 1-hour session that you take in your first year, typically with the doctoral coordinator. So your first year would be 1 hour per week with the doctoral coordinator, which is a great asset to you because it's an opportunity for you to get to know the doctoral coordinator and to have weekly check-ins where you are working through, you're beginning to think ahead for what does the second year look like? What does the rest of my time here at the College of Social Work look like? But also, the professional development focuses on a number of different topics: writing, organization, mentorship, and so on during that first year. In your second year, you have a second seminar that's an hour a week that you take with your cohort of second year students as well. We also have teaching and research practica, and those are to give hands-on experiences of teaching as well as research. And those contracts are developed to really advance your skills. So for example, if you're an experienced teacher and we really want to make sure that we're building that skill set for you to take the next step in teaching, whether that might be developing a new course or working on a teaching publication, or whether that might be teaching a new type of class that you've never taught before, and trying to, or participating in a TA. We meet students where they are and we want to advance those skills. We have had students who've had quite an extensive background in teaching before, and we really want to make sure that we're moving everyone to that next level. We also require a course in the principles of college teaching. Another important part of our program is individualized electives. So we have electives that are in your subject area as well as electives that are in your advanced methods. So you have 5 electives overall, and 2 of those electives are going to be focused on your particular area of research. So let's say that you're interested in substance use disorders. You might take a class that focuses on opioid use. You might take a class that focuses on theories around substance use treatment, and those might be 2 subject area electives that you would take. But you can also, we also want you to take courses in advanced methods, and many of our students complete a qualitative certificate, which is about 3 different qualitative courses, and do that through their electives process. We also have students who go and take advanced quantitative classes either in biostatistics or in other departments for the methodologies that they need for their dissertation. And so these are to help individualize that program to what works best for you. That 5th elective, if you're counting, can go towards an independent study. It could be a subject area, or it could be an advanced methods elective. You also will have a graduate research assistantship, and that's where you get that supervision with a faculty mentor. This is around 15 hours a week, and I'll come back and talk a little bit more, but this is paid through a graduate research assistantship. So this typically takes 2 days a week, where you're getting those hands-on skills in working with a faculty member on research. And this is where a lot of growth and a lot of learning occurs that is later evidenced in your outcomes, in the kinds of studies that you participate in or you conduct on your own, and the kinds of knowledge that you have. It's one thing to learn about qualitative methods in the classroom. It's another thing to go out and participate in a focus group analysis, to collect data, to analyze that hands-on. It's one thing to write a paper in statistics for a class. It's another thing to see a real data set and real data cleaning issues, and to work one-on-one with a faculty member to produce a paper, a report, and to do analyses. So that's what occurs in your graduate research assistantship. Now, we all recognize that student financial support is a reality. I can tell you it's been a while, but it hasn't been so long that I've forgotten the importance of that myself when I was in the program. There are semesters, when I'm referring to semesters, I'm referring to your fall and spring semester. So in the fall and spring of your first, second, and third year, I should say before I get into this, there are variations in student financial support. There are additional university level opportunities, and so sometimes that financial support varies a bit. But I'm going to speak to the general experience, so you'll be able to begin picturing what that looks like. And please know that when we make offers and then we come back and we talk specifically about the financial support, and there's an offer letter process. And so that is something that you have full information on as you make these decisions, which we know is so important. So in semesters 1 through 6, the fall and spring of your first 3 years, that is where we talk about that stipend, and which comes along with the research assistantship. And that stipend is roughly $18,000 per year, and that would be spelled out specifically in a offer letter. Columbia, South Carolina is a relatively low cost of living place, and so that's something to consider when thinking about that. In semesters 1 through 4, so you're thinking about your fall and spring of your first 2 years, there's full or partial tuition remission, so that's covering that coursework. In semester 7 and beyond, so at this point you're in your 4th year, starting off your 4th year, many of our students conduct teaching or research work. They may work as a research assistant on a project and fund some time that way. Others pick up and teach a number of different courses. And then we have students as well who plan to finish in their first 6 semesters in the program. We also provide assistance to identify internal and external funding and awards, and oftentimes those things support students as they're collecting dissertation data and support them as they are doing the work that occurs in your third, fourth year and beyond in a doctoral program. Your timing in the number of years is really based on your own program of study and your own readiness to conduct and complete your dissertation. The coursework is done in the first 2 years. Um, there's also funding for professional development and dissertation expenses. There's an application process for that. And then our graduate school has additional opportunities that come up for research expenses and some funds for that. So I know that there's a lot of, I'm going to speak to you. I'm on the doctoral committee, and I was on the doctoral committee before I was even in this role. So let's talk about what are we looking for? And this can be helpful for you now, as well as for you with us and for you with other application processes. It's helpful to know what's the insider track on that. So I'm going to speak to that really briefly here, and I'm going to tell you about another opportunity to get some more insights about our application process that's coming up. Applications are due in January, and then we conduct phone interviews with our applicants in February and March. That's our next step, and that is an important piece where some faculty members and committee members will meet with you either virtually, or they've traditionally been done by phone only, to ask you questions. And the opportunity is also there for you to ask questions of the program about to determine the right fit. For the application process, there are a number of requirements. We are looking for a detailed personal statement, 3 letters of reference, and I think I'm doing well on time, so I want to tell you a little bit about those letters of reference and what you're looking for. Those are typically coming from an academic reference who can speak to your potential for the future of being a successful researcher, a successful academic working with students, a successful applicant to make it through the doctoral program, and then for career readiness, potentially to be in academia, in research of some form. So you want to think carefully about those references. You're typically looking for somebody who's obtained a PhD themselves because they know what this takes and they can speak to that. So you want to go back and think about people who have supported you in your master's programs or even before as you get ready to write those letters. You're also going to want to submit a writing sample, and I encourage students that I think that writing sample is a great thing to run by some of those references in your network to try to select and think about that, which one might be the best. Writing samples do not have to be, but they often are things that you wrote as a paper for a course, but some students have, or some applicants, potential students, have other kinds of samples that they submit. We're looking for a GPA of 3.5 or higher in graduate courses. We are looking for an MSW. However, case by case, there have been exceptions for individuals. So if you're sitting here now and you have a master's in public health or a master's in some other closely related field, please don't just hang up now. Feel free to reach out to me. Those are things that we would typically encourage you to go ahead and submit your application, and we consider that on a case-by-case basis. But we really want to make sure that our students are, as you carry forward the social work profession, we think about that and your readiness to do that. There's an online application process that's available through the graduate school, and that's where you will go to fill out these materials. And then for international applicants, there's also the TOEFL or the IELTS exams for international applicants where English is not their primary language. You may have recognized that within these requirements, I did not discuss the GRE. And this is something that we're not requiring a GRE or an MAT score this year. So if you have not taken the exam, this is a very unique year in being able to get those exams in. That's not a requirement for our program, and it would not need to be submitted. So what do we think about as a committee when we sit down to review these? And we review each and every applicant and go through this process as a committee. Um, is the applicant motivated to develop new knowledge for the profession? So do you have a clear area of interest and a research focus? Is there evidence within the application of curiosity and critical thinking around that focus, around the profession, around research? Um, is there an evidence of openness to new ideas and learning? So those kinds of things come out oftentimes in your personal statement. We also want to figure out if the applicant is likely to be successful in the program. The college creates a large commitment financially to our students and a large emotional investment. We want you to do well. We want you to succeed. And so we want the students, we want to see that that is highly likely. So we're looking for a history of academic success, and we're looking for, we're going to read these materials to think about your skills in professional writing, critical thinking, and then oftentimes looking at transcripts and other things for quantitative skills, but there's a balance there. We're also looking at, we evaluate for something particularly in our phone interviews called GRIT, which is the history of persisting through challenges is how we think of that. Obtaining a PhD is difficult, particularly after the coursework ends and completing the process to go through your dissertation proposal and defend that, and then to go ahead and finish your dissertation work, and then to defend that successfully. We want to make sure many of our applicants have overcome great things, and we recognize that. And we're looking for the ability to overcome the challenge of a doctoral program. So that's a little bit of a tidbit when you think about those phone interviews. We also want to know if our program is a good fit for the applicant's interests and needs. As I talked about before, we're not looking for a perfect match with a faculty member, but we are looking for some faculty members where there's a fit, where we're seeing shared interest in that research idea, shared support by the faculty member of getting into something that they may or may not feel is a central part of their research agenda, and we're trying to come around you to figure out where's the fit to support you as a student. So what are some next steps? I'm checking on our time here. One, it's a great idea to come and try to get to know us better. And I say that typically in a virtual context right now. This is such an unusual time, and I recognize that, and I know so many of us have been affected by this. So I respect that, and we still would love for you to be able to find a time to engage with us. If not sitting in person in a doctoral class, which is probably a pretty limited option right now, to certainly participate in something virtually. And the biggest thing that I would encourage you to do is begin to reach out to faculty with similar interests. And I want to say a little bit about that. Sometimes students, I'll mention that I am a first generation college graduate, and I'm a second generation high school graduate. And so I recognize that sometimes coming to a doctoral program, we don't know yet what we don't know about the application process. Reaching out to faculty is a really important piece of that, wherever you want to apply. And you're looking for a faculty member who can support your research agenda, and that's typically evidenced by somebody having a PhD. So they've been through this doctoral process before, they have an active research agenda, and so you might want to look at things like their recent publications and see which direction those go in and how those might fit with the things that you're interested in, as well as any grants or funding that they have, to kind of see these are sort of the opportunities that other students might have come in on. What are your interests in doing things like that? That said, faculty members sometimes have a unique skill set that they're not using in the last 2 years. And so sometimes you need to delve a little deeper to see, oh, they've done this kind of work in the past. I see these publications here. I didn't realize they were interested in XYZ. So I encourage you to try to look and think about that as you're considering who would you want to connect with. You also are welcome to contact me. I apologize, I got a little choked up there. Um, you're welcome to contact me to schedule a time, and I am happy to talk with you about next steps. I've already connected with several of you, and I am excited about getting to know you and supporting your application or answering questions, whether you are planning to submit in this cycle year or you have some questions as you think for the future. Um, the other thing is you want to really focus on preparing that competitive application, right? There are some upcoming opportunities. I'll be announcing those within the next 24 hours to participate in some research discussions with faculty. And I would encourage you to look at the topic areas in the faculty and to decide if one or more of those would be a good option for you. In those faculty research discussions, we will be hosting a faculty member and bringing together a smaller group of you to discuss your research interest, to hear from the faculty about what kind of work that they do, and to also give you some further tips and insights into the application process itself. And so attending one of those, particularly with some overlap or some interest in that faculty member's research, would give us the opportunity to hear about your research interest and then ask you some questions, not as an interview process, really as a growth process to support your development, even at this early stage. We want to make sure that we are supporting you to develop the kind of scholarship that you're interested in. We want to, another important aspect of preparing a competitive application is drafting your personal statement and getting feedback through your academic and professional networks. Don't overlook going ahead and sending that out so that your professional supports can give you some feedback on that. And then reach out to your potential references if you haven't yet. Make sure that they've seen your personal statement so that it can help inform their letters. And recognize that giving them sufficient time to prepare that is going to create a stronger letter as they draft it. Okay. Sometimes we have prospective applicants who want to know where some of our graduates are. And here's a little look at where some of our alumni are right now. So just in both academic settings as well as in other settings, regionally and nationally. So our next piece, I'm going to just go back and I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. We have a few minutes for questions here, and so I will just open that up to all of you. Are there any questions at this point? What kinds of questions do we have?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. My first question is, how many students are selected during in the program annually?
So that's a great question. That varies from year to year, but it can be between typically around 4 students in our cohort. Different programs have different size cohorts of students, and it's a good thing to think about, but we have typically gone with about 4.
Okay. And my second question is, I know you touched on it a little bit in regards to those of us that may have a master's in social work and those of us that may not. And those students may be selected on a case-by-case basis. What are some of those other master programs that may be selected?
So master's in, we really will consider that on a case-by-case basis. So if your degree is not one of those that I've mentioned, please do reach out to me. That's something that I can bring before the committee. We meet regularly and we can have a further discussion about before you even submit. But the master's in public administration, master's in public health, sometimes a master's in a statistical program. We primarily do have master's in social work students with a range in clinical backgrounds, but we are open to other programs, and we want to make sure ultimately that your master's and that we can support you in your goals.
Okay, and I just have one more question.
No, please, this is great.
Okay, and my third question is, you indicated about the phone interviews. So obviously we have to submit our application by the required deadline by the 15th of January. Then we go into the phone interviews, those of us that'll have those. So what's the timeline after the phone interviews as far as for candidates to be selected and know if they have been selected or not?
That's a great question. That does vary a good bit. We are making those decisions by the end of the semester, and we continue to have ongoing conversation with applicants post-interview process. So to update you on where we are in our process, we are looking to make those decisions. I will say this is a decision that we take very, very seriously. And so we do take a significant amount of time after we've gone through our interviews to discuss that as a committee and make a thoughtful decision about which students we can best support this year. So Marcus, there isn't an exact deadline, but I can keep you all in the loop, and please know that I will be as we're in that stage itself.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, great to have you here. Thank you.
And a follow-up to that last question. So once the application is submitted and then you're starting to interview, will some people be notified that they will not go on to the interviews, or how is everyone going through the interviews, or how is that going?
We typically, there's a potential that it could go either way, but our goal with the interviews is to really try to gather additional information and to better understand the application itself. So we see these as being pieces that we want to conduct with students. If there are students who don't meet the criteria for admission, based on some of the things that I've already discussed, that would be a process that we would have a conversation about. But our goal with the interview process is that it's very difficult to know if a student will fit or not without that interview process. It's a piece of this understanding of next steps. Would it help to know a little bit about what the interview is like? I know that sure. So I've done a lot of these over the years. You typically get 2 different faculty members who meet with you. And those faculty members are people who, there's typically a member of the doctoral committee. So you have to recognize that that is the decision-making body, and that committee in and of itself wants to get to know you, right? And we think about these applications, you are individual people that we value and respect, and we really want to understand you and put our time and effort into doing that. So there's a committee member, and then there's typically another faculty member who might serve as a research mentor for you. So has some overlap, has some questions directly in your area. And they're together that you might end up getting questions like, well, I see you're interested in foster care. I'm just going to go for my own kind of area. I see you're interested in foster care and you're interested in looking at this particular aspect. Can you tell me more about what you know right now about foster care and the experiences of African American youth in foster care? Does that make sense? So we might delve more into a knowledge base, recognizing that you're growing, and we want to hear your critical thinking skills during that call. We want to better understand how you've overcome challenges in the past and how you see yourself adapting to this process. That doesn't mean that you have to self-disclose to us any sort of difficult experience, but we want to hear about how you are prepared to take on this next step, which can be a challenge in life. And so it's an opportunity for us to get to know you as a person. And typically we really leave that with a better understanding of who you are that doesn't necessarily emerge just from reading your application alone. After that, those 2 different faculty members will talk and we'll create a letter, and that information goes back to the committee to discuss again as a whole what sort of new insights we had.
Thank you very much. That was very thorough. One more thing is for an MSW graduating, do you typically wait for someone to have experience out in the field? How does that factor into consideration?
That's a great question. That is really meaningful. So there is variation on this. There are applicants who go directly from an MSW program into a PhD program. There are some important things to consider, and I am happy to talk that over with you by phone and individually, but I wouldn't want you to go without this insight. We typically encourage MSW students who are on more of a traditional path to work a few years after their MSW 2 to 3. 2 is an important cutoff within our discipline because it prepares you to be able to teach clinical courses. And that can come up later on when you're out on the job market. So students who enter and go straight through through the MSW and then decide to go straight for the PhD know that going into it. And I can talk with you a little bit about how that could change the academic job market so you can make an informed decision. But that's the piece of it. What I will say too is having a few years of MSW experience gives you some thoughtful questions, and it can be really helpful as you're going out and you're engaging your research subjects. When I do data collection with child welfare, not all of my work is child welfare. I've got a larger base of child well-being, but it's meaningful to people that I once did this work. Does that make sense? And it also creates a nice dialogue in the classroom as well, being able to talk about your professional and your clinical experiences. Students, and well, you all know this, in the classroom, you like hearing that, right? You want to know what you're preparing for practice, and you want to know what the faculty did in practice. Those kinds of things can build up, but sometimes there are unique circumstances where individuals practice for years before the MSW, and there are different trajectories for people. So it's something that we're open to, but it is a longer discussion that I wouldn't want you to enter into without insight. Does that kind of introduce the idea? You probably know now whether or not you want to discuss that more with me.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, no problem.
Good morning, Dr. Say. Nice to see you.
Great. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi. You had mentioned that ideally our letters of recommendation would come from faculty. So I graduated from my MSW in 2009. So that's quite some time in terms to now go back and ask those faculty members for letters of recommendation. However, I was thinking of pulling professionally because that's going to be more relevant. Will that be a detriment to my application?
Overall, you are looking for very strong letters that can support your that you are prepared to do this work. And so it's a balance, right? It might be worth going back and one thing you should know about contacting an old professor is that, I write letters all the time. One thing that you should know about contacting a professor is that they've all been there, and many of them recognize that there was a period of that they were out of school and then they went back and had to do this as well. So it's not uncommon for us to say, okay, well, let's get on the phone. Let's have a conversation. Please send your CV or your resume, and then let's talk about your goals. Let's read your personal statement so that somebody is prepared or able to write that letter. Does that make sense? And you should know that as an academic, I consider that one of my professional responsibilities. And so when students contact me, that's something that I take seriously. And you probably have mentors as well, or faculty who taught you in school. I remember reaching out in the same position that you're in now. And when I spoke with one of my faculty members who ended up writing me a letter, he was like, "Can you send me a picture?" And I was like, "Yes." I sent him a picture and he was like, "You sat in the front row every week. I remember you well." I was like, "Great. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that was me." And he wrote a letter that when I went to go interview for my doctoral program, they brought it up. We had a discussion about it at dinner when I was, so it was a very relevant letter, and he was well prepared to do that. If you ever had a faculty member who talked to you about going forward with doctoral studies, that's a good faculty member to reach back out to just when thinking about that. If somebody recognized that in you, and that doesn't mean that faculty do that well every time or that they read who really is going to be great at doctoral studies, but those are the kinds of folks. But Jennifer, I would encourage you to balance that as you're thinking about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, we are going to come back again in a few minutes, and we will have another opportunity to ask questions. You're also now going to get the opportunity to meet my colleagues, esteemed faculty here at the college, and I want them to be able to talk to you about their research and their experiences. So I don't want to overstep that time. So let me see. I have a slide for this. Let's see. Great. So now I want to welcome three of our faculty members, Dr. Nikki Wooten, Dr. Brianne Grace, and Dr. Bonki Wu. We're going to talk a little bit about research, and I'm going to start off by letting each of them tell you a little bit about their research and their interests, and then we should have time at the end of this section of the program for questions. So Dr. Wooten, would you kick us off by talking about your research, and then we'll go in order to Dr. Grace and Dr. Wu.
Okay. Can you all hear me okay?
I can hear you well.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Nikki Wooten. I'm an associate professor here. I've been on faculty here since January 2013. I'm also a member of the military. I've been in the Army Reserves as a lieutenant colonel currently for 31 and a half years. So that segues into my research agenda. My research area is military behavioral health services research with military and veteran populations. So I primarily use very large data sets, multiple data sources that I link together to form very large databases. For the past 6 years, I've been studying behavioral health care in Army Warrior Transition Units. I have a sample of almost 1 million Army service members who returned from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in fiscal year 08 to fiscal year 2015. So it's a longitudinal study where I look at both mental health and substance use diagnosis and problems, as well as their service utilization during deployment, after deployment, and for years afterwards. I also have done some work with qualitative work, interviewing Army women who returned from the war, Army National Guard women. That was actually my dissertation work. I've been funded by the Department of Veterans Affairs in a pre-doctoral fellowship and at NIH as well. I also have a research appointment at the Department of Veterans Affairs here, where I have access to that data as well. And in previous studies with one of my mentors, we linked Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs data. The unique aspect of studying a military population is that from the time you enter military service and even beyond, we can track your health service utilization, which includes your time in the military, and if you qualify for VA healthcare, your time in which you use VA healthcare. So that's an extensive longitudinal assessment of your utilizations and the problems you've had over time that may be associated with military service, that is military-related trauma and things that occur afterwards. I typically work with students. I do a lot of mentoring. Currently, I've published with over 45 students, that's undergraduates, master's levels, and doctoral level students. I like to work with students in a team, and I typically meet with my students at least once a week. I like to be able to identify what students' strengths are and then build from there, and then challenge you to acquire additional strengths related to research. But also because I've been a licensed clinical social worker since 1998, I have worked at Walter Reed as well. That's the National Military Medical Center. And so I practice with military personnel as well. I've been a child therapist there and also a social work consultant at the Armed Forces Center for Child Protection. So I am able to provide kind of a holistic approach to social work practice, as well as how to bridge the gap between your practice and research. Some of the things that my students have done with me, present at conferences, together, like with my master's level GAs, I may have them working on specific projects. And so I will ask them if there's something they want to present. There's a local conference here on the National Association of Social Work Conference. And so I may ask them if they want to present with me. And I usually let the student take the lead, but I am always present so I can introduce the student to the audience. So I can prep them and make sure it's a kinder, gentler audience. For the doctoral students, they typically work more so on research tasks. That can be anywhere from literature reviews, populating tables, writing parts of manuscripts that could be helping with the introduction. And also I may ask them to write some sections of the results if they are comfortable. But I always provide examples and assistance and guidance as they move forward. But I also assist doctoral students in formulating their own research agenda. Currently, I'm teaching 802, which assists doctoral students in formulating their conceptual model for their research agenda. So I'm challenging them to think very deeply and concretely and critically about their research agenda. Where is a good point for them to start to develop their research agenda? What pressing questions they may need to answer right now in terms of their research focus that will lay a good foundation for them to move forward either with their research practicum or their dissertation research. I will stop now and either let someone else present or offer an opportunity for questions to be asked.
Dr. Wooten, I do have a question, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Yes, you were actually one of my the faculty members that I was actually interested in contacting with. So I'm glad you're on today. My question was for you, when I reviewed your bio, why did you, obviously you were in the military, you indicated that, and I wanted to know, was that the reason why you wanted to dig deeper? And this is why you kind of went into that, that role as far as your research is concerned, in that area, to say.
So the question is, yes, I practice as a social worker with a military population, and I also am not a social worker in the military. I commanded a line unit, which a transportation company, and currently I teach senior level leaders. I prepare junior leaders to be senior leaders in the military. But when my soldiers went to war and came back, I noticed that they were different. And when I first got commissioned as an officer in 1997, I'd also had some enlisted time. But what I noticed is that I was involved with soldiers coming back from Desert Storm, Desert Shield. And I also saw soldiers come back from this war. And I noticed that some of my soldiers had changed. I was also a casualty assistance officer for one of my soldiers who deployed with another unit and died in action. He was killed in action. And so I did want to know more about how participating in this war changed the soldiers that I had known so well for a number of years. Most of my time has been spent in the DC National Guard, where we have units, like at 9/11, we had units to go to the airport to provide airport security. Then they have follow-on missions, maybe some of them over in the Pentagon to provide security as they came into the Pentagon, or on Capitol Hill as our congressmen came in to work in the garages. But we also had some of those units who left the Pentagon and also went over to Iraq, Afghanistan, or Gitmo. And so, yes, and I will say to all of you, whatever you choose as your research agenda, you need to be passionate about it. If it wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you have to scribble something down. But you need to be willing, because your best ideas don't come between 9 and 5. Sometimes it's at 3 a.m. And so you need to be passionate about whatever you choose to do. If you feel it's forced, then you may need to go back to the drawing board. But you definitely need to be passionate about it and have, if possible, some real world experience in that area, because that's how you tell people why your research is applicable to real people or real social workers.
Thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that.
So we'll have some opportunity for you to ask questions of the panel overall. And Dr. Wooten, that was excellent. Thank you. Why don't we move on to Dr. Grace, and then we can take a couple short questions there, and then we should still have time for overall research questions related to the panel. So Dr. Grace, would you start next?
Sure. It is a real pleasure to see all of you here today. I'm impressed by the numbers, and I'm excited by a lot of the research that you guys have all put into before you came here today. That's awesome. So I am Brianne Grace. I am a new associate professor. I just got tenure, and I've been here about 7 years. My research focuses on refugee experiences, both in the United States as well as in refugee camps and in the process of flight in fleeing war. So I work with doctoral students who are interested in doing international research, who are interested in immigrant and refugee experiences, who are interested in nonprofit organizations that serve immigrants and refugees. And I've started working more with students who are interested in questions of kind of health disparities and health disparities in language in particular. So my research has been funded by the State Department, by the Department of Education, by the Mellon Foundation, by the Ford Foundation, by the Department of Justice, and here in the US, that tends to be focused on refugee experiences with the healthcare system, refugee experiences with nonprofit organizations that subcontract with the federal government to provide resettlement, and refugee experiences navigating daily life. My research is fairly unique within the field because instead of focusing on systems, I actually am more interested in refugees' experiences of systems. So most of my work tends to be ethnographic, and it also tends to focus a lot more on kind of its longitudinal qualitative research, which is fairly unique. I have recently started a new research project on refugee experiences of torture and how questions relating to torture experiences come up across generations, as well as how they kind of travel within the resettlement process. So by that I mean, if somebody has experienced torture in their country of origin, how do refugees make sense of that? Especially if they've been tortured by a state, I should say. How do they make sense of a new state within the resettlement process? How do they learn or understand trust, et cetera? So I am not a social worker, I should say. I am a sociologist by training, but I am delighted to be in a college of social work. I love the applied nature of social work research, and it has been a great fit and a great home for me. So students who are interested, again, immigrants and refugees, nonprofits that serve refugees, state policy, those are kind of my major areas.
Excellent. Do we have some questions for Dr. Grace? And we will again circle back to do some overall group questions.
Yes, I had one question about whether you are looking into like trauma-informed care for the refugees and immigrants within nonprofits, or just research of maybe new alternative methods of interventions that you could do on an individual.
I would definitely welcome students who are interested in that aspect. But I tend to study the opposite side, so refugee experiences of, so rather than the design of the programs themselves, how refugees kind of experience it. And so that's a huge area of need within my field. So the research on trauma-informed care tends to come mostly from psychiatrists who are largely interested in population-specific interventions. So there are like people who study, Bosnians who experience torture because of interfaith marriage. And so there are specific interventions kind of designed to meet their needs. But there hasn't been a lot of kind of general work or work across populations. And so the result is, because most refugee resettlement agencies are working with populations from 30 to 50 different countries at any given time, they tend to be unable to enact a lot of the findings from research or a lot of the evidence-based practices, just because you might have one client from one country, one client from another. So it's really difficult to design programs with that kind of research. So if that's something you're interested in, I would definitely welcome students with that interest. And I collaborate a lot at the university. There's a Survivors of Torture clinic, which is a refugee health clinic that specifically specializes in refugees who have experienced torture. The lead physician who's there is actually one of the top scholars in this area in the country, and this is the 4th clinic of this type that he's set up across the US. And he is a very good friend and a fantastic collaborator, and has been very, very supportive of students. So, I mean, that's a huge area for growth within the field, and particularly within social work. So yes, absolutely. That's something, not that it's not my personal interest, but something I would be supportive of as a mentor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Grace. That was wonderful. Dr. Wu, we would like to hear from you now. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to meet you virtually today. My name is Bong-ki Woo. I'm an assistant professor. I got my PhD degree at Boston College, and this is my third year at the University of South Carolina. So since being its third year, I have still a vivid memory of being in the doctoral program. Okay, so my research focuses on health and mental health consequences of inequality in the society, with a specific interest in the experiences of racial and ethnic minorities. My primary research seeks to understand the specific conditions under which the social sources of stress, especially around racism, helps explaining the persistent and pervasive racial and ethnic health disparities. So in my papers, I have examined social, cultural, and environmental determinants of health, minority health, including racial prejudice, discrimination, ethnic identity, and racial residential segregation on the environmental level. So I'm currently focusing on the growing anti-Asian racism during the COVID pandemic, and have been working on identifying what factors can mitigate the mental burden of discrimination experienced by Asian Americans and immigrants during the pandemic. In addition to identifying the protective and buffering factors, I also have been a part of projects that focuses on how racial and ethnic minorities can make their own voices to fight racism through being a part of various anti-racism activities, which can be ultimately related to their health and well-being during the difficult time. Additionally, I also have been promoting more social work research and curriculum that focuses on race and ethnicity and anti-racism efforts. So I have been working on several papers and book chapters on how race and ethnicity is addressed in social work research articles and curriculums. And I'm also currently working on, as a part of the newly launched 13th Grand Challenges around eradicating racism, and I'm working on working on the white papers with my colleagues across the country. So so far I have worked with 2 doctoral students on my research projects based on where they are in the program, and based on their research interests, they have been participating in ranges of aspects of the research projects, including writing a conference abstract, literature review, data analysis, and manuscript writing as a co-author. So that was a little bit about myself.
Great, and examining racism and discrimination is such a key part of the work of our field right now, and really pivotal. I know that there were many individuals who were interested in some aspect of this in their in the short bios that we got from you about your research interests. Do we have questions for Dr. Wu? What questions do we have? We'll keep those specifically to Dr. Wu, and then we'll open it up to the whole panel in just a second.
One quick question, Dr. Wu, you said you focused on the growing anti-Asian discrimination. For your doctoral students, do they primarily focus on that demographic, or if they had an interest in another racially discriminated against population, would you consider them to enter into your study realm?
Sure. So currently I'm focusing on anti-Asian racism, and I have primarily working on many papers recently on Asian Americans and Asian immigrants. However, I also work on the topics around racism and discrimination among other racial and ethnic minority groups as well. So I definitely welcome any students who are interested in the dire impacts of racial discrimination among people of color. Yeah.
Great. Other specific questions? Okay, well, I have a few other prompts for the panel, but I do want to go ahead and open it up more broadly first to see what questions you have overall about research, questions you have about guiding your next steps in making a decision about the program and about the work here. Does anyone have a question that they would like to offer to the entire panel?
Yes, I do. So what is typically the involvement of the faculty with their community and the impact of their research on like what's happening outside of the school and even like policy wise?
So I think, go ahead. I'd like to, Deborah, that's a great question. I'd like to open it up to the panel. I have some thoughts on this as well. But as a state institution, our work is really pivotal out in the community. We see that as a key piece of the work that we're doing. But I would like to hear some applied examples. I can offer some as well from the panel.
Sure. So I can offer the example of our shared student, if that's all right. Okay. So Kristen and I jointly mentor a student who is interested. One of her interests includes the experience of unaccompanied children who are put into the U.S. foster care program. So this includes kids who were separated from their parents and not reunited, immigrant children. And so she is actually interested in how case managers essentially within that foster care program understand children's rights in relationship to kind of international legal protections for children. And so she has spent a fair amount of time going out to the shelter where the children live and interviewing their caregivers. And then we just wrote a piece that we submitted to pediatrics based on some of her research. So as well as some other stuff. But so that's an example where when, what was it, a year and a half ago now, when the child separation policies at the border were really pressing, we already had connections with the foster care program here that is specifically for refugee and immigrant children. And so she was able to kind of work with them to develop this research project and then kind of conduct it. Otherwise, it would be nearly impossible. So those connections were really important. She had previously worked in US-funded international orphanage networks. So she had kind of a broader experience and social work practice experience working kind of from that perspective, from more of a global perspective. And so, this was a really good project that allowed her to translate that and then provide direct feedback back to the organization about ways that it might be useful for some of their case managers to think about their jobs in order to alleviate a lot of stress and anxiety that they were feeling because of the being caught in the middle of a really detrimental policy.
I think that's a great example, Bree, and our work with that student. I think we both probably really like that example. But I would also say that as a faculty overall, we're located here in the capital of Columbia, or the Columbia is the capital of South Carolina, and so for that reason, many of these state organizations, the Department of Mental Health, DEOTIS, which is our substance use treatment agency, DSS, which is our child welfare agency, all of our state agencies have an office close by, and it's not hard to find somebody on the faculty who knows the director of each of those different agencies and can put you in contact. And with my students, I have another student who's interested on foster care, and I know the South Carolina Foster Parent Association, so she was applying for a grant. It was an easy connection to be able to get them to, that's an important body in the state. South Carolina is a small state. It is a very well-connected state, and you will know somebody on faculty will know somebody who can get you in. And so we, in a way that not all programs have that, but because we're situated so closely into the state, I was amazed by that when I first came here as a faculty member, that, within the first 3 months I'd met several directors of state agencies. So we see ourselves giving back directly to the state. To any, Dr. Wu, Dr. Wooten, do either of you want to contribute something else, or we can open it up for a new question?
Yeah, I think I heard the policy question, how we use our research to advocate for policy.
Yes,
so
great.
In a number of ways. For the last 7 years, I've sat on the Dawn Research Institute Board of Directors. It's oversight over VA research at the VA. And so I assist with making policy there in terms of how to allow non-VA researchers to access research and to be able to conduct research at the VA. Also, more recently, this past July, I was asked by a Stars and Stripes reporter to comment about how the Department of Defense can make changes in their sexual assault and sexual harassment policy, given the death of Vanessa Gideon at Fort Hood. And so oftentimes we are contacted by the press to make comments relevant to our research area. And in May, the Memorial Day, I was featured in a USA Today article about the representation of Latinos in the military and my own personal experience of racial discrimination and bias in the military. But that kind of brings to light some of the issues related to my research area. And I think locally, as Dr. C was mentioning, I've served on the advisory committee for the South Carolina Violent Death Registry, which we helped the state to create variables that are relevant for them to assess the population health here in the state. I do some opioid related research as well, particularly related to the military population, and also on the advisory committee for behavioral health at the Department of Health and Environmental Control.
Thank you, all of you.
Yeah, one of my research focuses on the racial hate crime. So knowing that there's no state level hate crime law in South Carolina, I am leading one research project that focuses on what factors are related to the perceptions of racial hate crime. So I have been studying around how racial prejudice or racial discrimination experiences shapes the perceptions of racial hate crime among the residents in South Carolina. For this study, I was particularly focusing on the student population here, but I'm planning to expand it to the broader communities in South Carolina. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready for another question, I think. Okay, well, in thinking about developing a research agenda, coming in as a doctoral student, I would ask the panel what they think students need to consider and what sort of, what they should do to try to reach out with faculty as they're beginning to develop their applications and thinking about the match between their own research area and that of some of our faculty. Do you have any tips for them?
I would suggest don't be shy. Reach out to faculty, have some conversations about your research interests, determine whether or not it's a good fit for you. And when you prepare your application, mention those faculty members that you've had conversations with as potential research mentors that you would like to work with. Always identify someone on faculty that you would like to work with. That's very important. Mentorship is important as a doctoral student and will be important if you choose to go on to be an academic scholar. We all have mentors that we still keep in contact with from our doctoral program, but also mentors that we have connected with throughout our careers. It is a mentored profession. And the only way you can be successful is to have mentors and multiple mentors, not just one, because every mentor will provide something different for you.
That's excellent advice.
I think kind of going off of what Dr. Wooten said, it's really important to reach out and express your interest and to be as specific as possible, particularly if you have practice experiences that connect. It really helps scholars to know not only what you're interested in, but kind of why, to get a broader sense of where you've been and how you intend to approach your research question, even knowing that that will probably change as you develop more sophisticated methods. But I will also say that it's important to keep in the back of your mind that when you reach out to us, we are very unlikely to be like, yes, I will work with you, or at least I am, because we do not get to make the decision about admittance into the doctoral program. So I think you should know that you should reach out to us and that we are very excited to get your emails. And also temper that by saying, even if we are not jumping up and down in our emails and they're not full of exclamation points and we don't assure you that you can come work up with us forever and ever, don't be turned off by that, right? Know that we cannot control the admissions process, and we do not want to make you promises that we cannot keep. So if you receive a very nice email, oh, thank you so much, your interests, seem to align very closely with mine. It sounds like you have great practice, experiences in this area, et cetera, et cetera. Don't read that as somebody saying no, or somebody not being interested in you. Know that our responses will often be tempered. And I know that sometimes it's difficult when you're putting all of your interests on the line and expressing great interest. It's like almost like asking someone out on a date, right? You're putting yourself out there and then you get only a lukewarm response. I know that it can be demoralizing. So I just want to caution you that do not be afraid when that happens to you. Know that it's just part of the normal process.
That's excellent. Now we have a number of applicants who are interested in teaching, and I've talked about how our program overall, just as you're our sample of faculty panels right now, our program overall and our college values high levels of teaching as well as research, and that there's an overlap between those things about how we incorporate our work into the classroom. Would any of you be willing to speak a little bit about how you do that personally? Because as academics and for a PhD program in social work, research and having a passion for research is absolutely critical. But as a college, we really value teaching as well, and that's something that we want to support students to do. And as a faculty, we incorporate that in, and we have that same value for ourselves. So faculty, would any of you be willing to talk about how sort of your research informs your teaching informs your research, and how you create that balance for our students who are just beginning to think about this, our prospective students?
So, well, I guess I'll start. In my own doctoral program, I got my PhD at the University of Maryland. One great piece of advice I got during my teaching practicum from my mentor was, teach what you do research in. You will always stay up to date on the research in your area. So I typically select, I teach military trauma, I teach military behavioral health at the clinical level for interventions. And I'm also the coordinator for the military certificate program. So I oftentimes choose readings for my courses that I want to read, that I find interesting, that I also know the students will find interesting, that are relevant to social work practice in this area, given that I do research and have practice in this area. So I often try to bridge that gap for not only me, but for students, because I have to read the readings also, and then be able to teach them to the students.
Excellent. So you're really seeing expertise in the classroom that reflects all of the things that you are a national expert on. And so that's a really nice way to mesh those things together.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. I didn't want to speak over Bonki or Dr. Wu if he was going next, but yeah, likewise, I think one of the cool things about our program is that students have a mentored teaching experience where you will go in and you will be assigned a faculty member to mentor, in the class, or who will mentor you in the classroom. And so I always look forward to having doctoral students. I apologize if you can hear my children in the background. They are playing video games and they're very loud. There's not a quiet place in my house right now. I apologize. But I always look forward to having those students in the classroom in order to do a kind of mentored teaching experience. I think that, obviously the goal is for students to learn a lot in that process, but I often learn a lot from the doctoral students who are, guest teaching in my classes, because, all of us have a different take on how to kind of be present in a classroom, of different technologies that we use, how we divide up our time, how we approach the learning process. And so I actually really welcome doctoral students in my classroom because I often learn a lot from them. I hope they learn from me, but it's really an exciting kind of exchange, because once you're in the classroom for a while, it's really easy to kind of find your routine, especially as far as style, how you divide up the time, which courses you teach. And so I find it really refreshing to have doctoral students in my classes. I teach a lot as well in the honors college here at the university, which is one of the top honors colleges in the country. And I find that a really rewarding process as well. And I really like it when social work doctoral students come and visit that classroom, because that classroom, the classes that I teach in the honors college are very interdisciplinary, where I have students from every major under the sun, and those classes tend to be more topical. So I teach classes on genocide and refugee experiences. And so those classes offer a very different kind of opportunity to introduce students to social work, especially because many of the students are freshmen or sophomores. And so it's a very different student population. Students who are often very interested in kind of questions of social justice are often in those classes, but they don't really know what to do with that yet. Are they going to be political science majors? Are they anthropology, sociology, social work? So it's really an opportunity to be like, hey, this is what we do. Social work is actually this really broad field of practice. Come see what we do. And so I really enjoy that. And I really enjoy having doctoral students teach or guest lecture in those classes with me.
Excellent. So we are coming to the end of our time with our faculty panel. We'll be having a student panel right after this, but I did want to open it up for at least one more solid question. We have a few minutes. Oh, I put too much on that, didn't I? Now you're like, is my question solid? One more question, right? Or more. So what, any other questions from our prospective students?
I'd love to ask a question. I would love to hear what kind of opportunities there are for students that might want to conduct research that would require travel, whether that's, domestically or internationally. I don't know if that's been part of any of your research or if you've worked more so with local data sets and folks in your work.
So I think Dr. Grace has the most experience on this, and so I really want to hear from her. So we're going to start there.
Sure. So it depends a little bit about what your interests are and what your background is for that kind of research. But yes, I mean, so it's a very significant part of my research is conducted in Tanzania, Somalia, and Kenya. And so that research, and it's all interview based, and it's based in Swahili and Kizigua, so two local languages. So yes, so there is opportunity to do research internationally. At the university, we have the Walker Center for International Studies, which tends to be kind of the international hub of the university and has student fellowship opportunities. So you can apply for funding for international travel through the Walker Center. And then there are other centers that, depending on kind of your geographic area of interest and your topical area of interest, that may also be able to support that. So for instance, I was a mentor and on the committee of a student in education who was interested in doing research in Senegal. And so she had fellowship funding through the Rule of Law Collaborative, which is through the Provost Office. As well as funding through the African Studies Center, which is based out of Walker, which also has some student funding money. Now, it also depends kind of your geographic area of interest and whether there are national fellowships that can support like language development, travel, data collection, et cetera, et cetera. So some of that might be a little bit specific to your project, your language skills if you need them to do the research, and what level of skill you have coming in. But there's an apparatus within the university to help facilitate some of those language skills, especially during the summer, to send you to intensive language programs and things of that nature. Can I ask a little bit about where you're interested in doing research?
Well, I speak Spanish, so I've had an opportunity to work with some immigrant communities, but I've also had some experience working with professionals and families who have adopted in Eastern Europe and Romania. So two very different places, but those are kind of my areas of interest.
That sounds great. Thanks.
Well, Julia, that was a very solid question. So that was great. Yeah. I would like to open it up for another question. We still have a few minutes and we'll be having our doctoral students joining us. So we have time for maybe one more.
I have a question. This is something that I have had the opportunity to speak a little bit about with Dr. Say, and my concerns are that my research is rather novel, and it's based on the work that I've been doing over the last 5 years, and we had an opportunity to discuss that. Nonetheless, there's some anxiety in not being able to find a really strong faculty fit. And so I'm wondering to what degree that will be supported, in that I will be approaching the program with some what I consider rather novel ideas. However, there are theoretical orientations from which I've had to glean, mainly that of military or working with trauma. And so just kind of want to get an idea of how I can best present that research, and so that I can begin to garner support and interest in a program that would be willing to support it.
So I would love to open this to our panel, and Jennifer, you and I have gotten a chance to talk, so that's excellent. Just to update the panel, I had talked about how our program has a history of wrapping around students with their individual research interest, especially for a student like Jennifer, who has a really unique skill set that's backed up by extensive practice right in this area. And I won't, I think that that's your area to describe further. But I would say to our faculty panel, have you ever worked with students whose area does not directly match to your own work, and successfully? So I can say that as a child welfare researcher, that I have a lot of students whose work is like tangential or of interest, but is not necessarily, they're interested on child well-being. I also have a good bit of research that focuses on child well-being, a new study on child health that doesn't look at child welfare at all. And so your own work is emerging, and you have an expertise and a skill set that you can use and apply to different types of areas. Your committee overall, we've all been on committees where our work does not fit centrally to that area. And I've even supported a student whose area was adult protection. And that work was obviously a separate area entirely than my own, but there were constructs and there were theories and ideas around that that were consistent, and we were able to collaborate together on that. Our faculty panel, anything you'd like to add in our last?
I'm working with 2 doctoral students whose research area is tangentially related to mine. I do mental health and substance abuse work, so I have one doctoral student whose work is specifically related to opioids, but it overlaps with my work because I know all the same variables. I know the substance abuse theories. I'm very familiar with the substance abuse research because some of it is applicable to just general populations, both military and your community level population. And then there is another doctoral student, her work is related to trauma. I've done some trauma-related work and trauma-related practice, but she's interested in police violence against African Americans. So I do have a sub-focus on women and African Americans as a part of my overall research agenda. So I'm able to provide some input and work with that student as well. I'm on her dissertation committee.
I think this is something unique that you don't find at every program, which is that we want to talk with you individually about your area and find a team that will support you and collaboratively make sure that that's in your best interest, that you are feeling a connection and that our faculty are feeling that they can support you. But that's an individualized process that we're happy to support you in as we move forward. And I would encourage you to just reach out to our faculty. They want to hear from you and they want to engage at this point and to hear about your research interests. Whatever they can respond back is based on their individual dynamic of how they facilitate that, because they don't get to accept you, themselves, but they do remember. And I will say that those are important conversations that have significance as the process moves forward. All right, I believe we have our students are coming together. So we should be getting our doctoral student panel. I can see familiar faces in the virtual room. Faculty, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate Dr. Grace, Dr. Wooten, and Dr. Wu for making time for this. And thank you for your insights. I really appreciate it.
Great, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Excellent. Well, we have a big enough room that I'm going to shift around, and I'm going to see. You're going to be shocked. I have a slide for this. Let's see. All right. Here's our student panel. So Tasha, do I have you here with us?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. And Eric, do I have you here with us? And welcome, Tasha. All right. How about Eric?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. Hi, Eric. And how about Steve?
I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. And how about Karen?
I'm here.
Hi, Karen. Welcome. Thank you. And how about Agnes? All right, well, it makes sense then for us to start at the top. So why don't we start off with Tasha? What I'm going to ask is I'm going to close down this screen so you can see our different students as they're talking. What I'm going to ask them to do is, this is a sample of our students. We're very proud and glad to have them here. And I'm very thankful that you've made time, because being a doctoral student is a busy time. So thank you for coming. I'd like you to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what year you are in the program, your research interests as you see them now, and then who you're working with. So please feel free to take a few minutes to discuss that, 2 or 3 minutes to talk about yourself, rather than just, there's no rush to just say your name. And then we will have some opportunity for some questions as well. Tasha, will you start us off?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Tasha Childs. I'm a second year PhD student in the College of Social Work. A little bit about me, I kind of have a unique path to social work. So I have my bachelor's in education and then completed my master's in social work with a focus on school social work. So my research interests are in school social work, but that's inclusive of adolescent behavior, school climate, working with interdisciplinary teams, and the main goal of basically everything I'm interested in is to address educational inequalities for our most vulnerable students. And so some of the ways I've been able to do that so far in the program is with my work with Dr. Aiden Iakini, and we have very similar overlapping interests. And I know you guys just heard, I caught the back end of the faculty panel there, and I'd say that it's really great to have just a mentor that supports both my research interests and finding ways to align the work that I'm interested in doing with work she already has going on or potential projects. So I've been able to work on a variety of different things in my research interest area. So developing interventions with students and teachers, working at more of an organizational school level to get a better understanding of interventions that are already in place, and then also working on the mental health provider side too, of looking at teachers who are providing mental health services or supports in classroom-based interventions, and then as well as just different perceptions of mental health providers. So that's the big picture, I would say.
That's excellent. Tasha, I'd throw in one more thing. Where are you from?
Okay, yep, I'm from all over the place, but I graduated with both my bachelor's and master's from Ohio State. So I spent the past 6 years there before coming to South Carolina. So these past couple of years have been the first years that I've really been in a different state and a different school system. So that's been a really unique experience for me, because I was in one community for so long. So it's been great to build new community partnerships with schools and different faculty across the college, not just in our College of Social Work, but in education, psychology, the different departments.
Excellent. Eric, will you pick up?
For sure. I'm Eric King. I'm a first-year student. This is my first semester. here at the University of South Carolina, the PhD program. I kind of took the long way around. I did my undergrad in behavioral science. I got my master's in social work at the other USC, the University of Southern California, not to be confused with University of South Carolina. I know that now. Um, and I'm licensed independently here in the state of South Carolina to practice clinical work. I did some clinical work at the federal level for outpatient mental health for the VA for about 3 years before joining the university. And I very much so enjoyed that. My research interests kind of center around concerns dealing with veterans and veteran policy. I will be honest, when I came to the university, my research interests and ideas were very much so kind of a wet lump of clay on a board, trying to figure out how to create a pot. And I'm still in the process of forming that clay, but the university has been amazing with that, and everybody, to include my cohort and the cohort in front of me, to everybody that I've come in contact with, and really being a part of that process. I stayed in the same, I'm in the same wheelhouse, but helping me really formulate what it is that question gets defined as has been an amazing process so far. And I'm looking forward to continuing that. And I think the question was, where am I from originally? I'm, like Tasha said, I'm from all over. I claim Pittsburgh because before here, that's where I lived the longest, but that was like 2 years. So, I've been all over the place, Columbus as well. So yeah, just everywhere.
Excellent. And Eric, in that first year, that is such a typical experience, is that everyone comes in with a research area, and then there's a lot of shaping that goes on to really make sure it's a good fit. So that's something that for all of you thinking about being a first year doctoral student, that's a shaping process. It's really, really natural phase in this. Steve, will you go next for us, please?
Sure. So I'm Steve Wall. I'm a second year student here in the College of Social Work. My interest is veterans and identity. I also have an interest in the history of social work, how it became a profession, and I think there are some parallels between the way that veteran policy has been created and expanded in this country, parallels the path of the professionalization of social workers as well. I think they influence one another. One day I will be able to connect those two things and feel successful. But right now I'm working through what it means to research veterans. What's really interesting is I actually started my first year working with Dr. Wooten. And through that process, I realized my question wasn't necessarily about veterans. That was just the population. And because of the way the program's set up, I was able to look around at other faculty that might be able to help me investigate some things I didn't know, and wasn't necessarily familiar with veterans, but knew the things that I wanted to know. And so now I'm working with Dr. Farber, Dr. Naomi Farber, and I've been able to continue working with Dr. Wooten and developing my research ideas through projects that are outside of class, plus a class that she teaches. So what's been really great over the course of my 3 semesters here is that I've been able to pick the things that are helpful for me, and then exploit and learn more about those things. And then the things that, I can abandon and I don't really need to research right now to get at my question, I can change that. I can be flexible in what my priorities are as I learn more about methods and I learn more about theory and I learn more about the history. I can then change course fairly easily. And so that hasn't been a barrier that, I locked myself into something and I can't, go outside. I've been able to do an independent study with a sociologist which then is going to turn into a real research project on campus. And we hope that that has real world implications, not just a fun project for me to do a survey. So there's real opportunity to work with people and do real things that I found so far. And what's really surprising to me is, like Eric, I worked at the VA before I came here, and I thought I would be really relying on people at the VA and this large institution to get the information or to understand things that I was working on. And that has not been the case, because the support that I've received so far here has actually supplemented that other support that I had before I came here. And I think the only thing left is where I'm from. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, but I've been transient ever since I was 15. So yeah, if living there has influenced the kind of pizza that I eat. So I guess that's where I'm from.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Karen, I'm gonna move to you next, please.
Yeah. So my name is Karen Andrea Flynn. I am a second year PhD student here. My interest is in immigration, U.S. policy as it pertains to immigration, as well as social mobility within the context of Argentina and the Venezuelan diaspora. So I've been working with Dr. Roth for the past year and a half, which has been fantastic. And Dr. Grace, who you guys talked to earlier, she's my academic advisor. So the mix of their experiences has been really beneficial for me. Theoretically, Dr. Grace has been able to impart a lot of knowledge on sociology, which is really pertinent to what I'm doing and that I hadn't previously looked for. And then Dr. Roth has kind of allowed me to learn a whole lot more about immigration, US policy, and how things are shaping within Central and South America, Central America and the United States. I think, like echoing what Steve said, we get a lot of opportunities at this university with our program to touch base with the different scholars, and it's really up to us to kind of think about what we're interested in and, you know, go out there and make that contact with the faculty. They've been very approachable in my experience. And I've been able to, like Tasha said, also get to know people in other disciplines, education, which is also really pertinent to immigration and the experiences here in the US. So that has been my experience in the past year and a half, and it's been fantastic. I am originally from Argentina, and so that definitely impacts a lot of my interests. And like my fellow cohort, I've moved around a lot, but right now we're stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Excellent, thank you. And Agnes?
Yes.
Welcome.
Agnes is here. Yes, thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Agnes Zomeneka Wofoda. I was born in Cameroon, moved to the US about 12 years ago. I'm from New Jersey now, but I moved here for a PhD program about a year and a half ago. I'm in my second year, and my interest is in, how do I really put this? So, because the faculty has been helping me really make this sound like I want it to. My interest is in exploring how immigration may have affected the family perception of marital satisfaction. So I have been in communities, Cameroonian community, where I have seen a lot of family disruption, family value changing, and I've seen a lot of criminality among immigrants where they argue about perception of marriage, perception of what satisfaction is. So immigrants don't see marriage the same thing as American, for example. So I'm exploring that because I want to make sure that I bring awareness into that kind of a phenomenon that really exists, but is not much talked about. As a Cameroonian, my population of interest is Cameroonian first, but I have been working with Dr. Grace, which is my advisor, academic advisor, and my research advisor, Dr. Grace, and then you just talk to her, she's my research advisor, and Dr. Benrod is my academic advisor. Of course, the topic has changed many times since I've been here, but it's getting to something that they are able to make me understand what is really what I'm talking about, because it seems like it's something that is only in my mind, but a lot of people don't have it. So, and Dr. C here is also my mentor, so she's been also working with me to make sure that this is happening. Everyone, my cohort members, Steve, Tasha, Karen, everyone in my cohort is like, Agnes, is this what you are talking about? Because as a French speaker, I have some challenges in really portraying this into what it is, but the cohort, the faculty here has been amazing. I've been enjoying my experience, even though sometimes there are some challenges, but it's part of the learning process, and I enjoy being here.
I love having you here. Our students, our students are excellent, and every interaction that I have with our students helps me grow as well. As you all know, I announced I'm interim here, so this is something that I wanted to get to engage more with our students and to hear from them. And so I'm very grateful that you're all here today. This is normally a point where we would, if we were in person, you'd have a chance to break out and talk and have some individual conversations. But as prospective students, I'm sure you have questions that you want to present to our students. I'd like to open that up now for the panel. Their experiences as being a student, questions you might have for them. This is a fresh group. They have not forgotten what it was like to apply and make these decisions. And so you'll be able to hear that from them in a way that, it's been a while since I made these decisions myself. So let's, about which program to go to. So let's open it up. Who has a question for our student panel? I'm like the elephant in the room right now, aren't I? I think that's what's killing it.
One thing I also want to mention is that when I was doing my MSW, I didn't want to do it in social work because I felt like I want to do only micro practice. But I was like, I went to Rutgers in New Jersey, so I had faculty that also helped me like focus on immigration and international social work for my master. So, and then I was working with immigrants for about 3 years also in New York before I moved here. So a lot of things have like set my path to coming here and to just working on the topic I'm working on. I'm very stubborn in that topic, even though it doesn't really make sense for a lot of people, but the faculty has been helping me here tailor it into like an academic topic, because when I have it, it sounds more like, oh, that's something people will be talking about in the community, but how would you make it academic? And the faculty here has been amazing helping me with that.
So I have a question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Marcus.
Sorry, Dr. C.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. So my question for the current students that are enrolled, how did you go about reaching out to the faculty? We heard some good things today about, Dr. Wooten put her email in the chat. We can email her. Obviously, we can read folks' bios. But what did you specifically do to kind of reach out to those faculty members to see if your research was similar to theirs, or if it would be a good match, if they would be good mentors for you?
I would say just go for it. Like Dr. Broom gave her email, everyone's phone numbers are listed. Everyone is super receptive to talking with any students, prospective students, current students. Like it seems like this huge like barrier sort of to like, oh, you send an email, you read it like 4 or 5 times, especially if you've never met the person. But I've always received like really quick responses back from any of the faculty that I've tried to contact, even before I was a student here. And just be really sort of specific of like what you're looking to understand. I think that's helpful too. Like if you have a specific question about a project or just their interests in general, see if they have students already working with them too that you can talk to. That's a really good way to get a perspective of not just like what the faculty is working on, but what are some of the opportunities you have as a student working with them too.
Yeah, for me, I went on the school website before even coming here for the open house. I looked up in the student, the college website, and I found out about the faculty that I was interested in, hoping to work with them one day. And I emailed them. One thing that also made me come here was the way they responded very fast to my email. I would send an email and the next day I would see a response. I was surprised because for some other school where I was applying, you would send an email and wait for a week, and then, or maybe you will have to send a reminder to get a response. But when I send my emails here, I got responses very quick. So that was one thing, and they will always respond. You look and then you send them an email.
Yeah, I actually reached out to Dr. Wooten a year before I even applied, because I had started thinking about a PhD program, and I reached out, and this is a secret that isn't really a secret, but if you reach out to an academic and tell them that you want to talk about their research, they will likely want to talk to you about their research.
Absolutely.
So if you have a genuine interest in research that someone's doing, whether you've read an article or you just see like, in their CV, something about a research project they're working on, ask them about that specific thing and why that interests you, so that, they have some understanding of what would be helpful for you. But yeah, the faculty that I've reached out to here, there's a newer faculty member, Dr. Dorian White. He was brand new when I started, and I just reached out to him because I was also interested in anthropology, and he's also an anthropologist in addition to being a social worker. And then we had like a 3-hour conversation over lunch about what that looks like. There was nothing in it for him, and I benefited completely from that conversation. So yeah, if you have specific questions, I would say reach out to him. And be as clear as possible what it is that you want to talk about so they can be as helpful as they can.
Yeah, I think that was, for me, that was some of the best advice that I got, was that, even just taking a look at their CV and seeing some of the research and looking over it. And if it interests you, reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'd seen this. And it doesn't even have to be similar topics. When I came in, I heard the question to some of the staff about making connections based upon topics. I had reached out to professors regarding just the type of statistical analysis that they were doing that I was interested in. It wasn't even related to anything regarding my topic. And they sat down with me for, several hours to discuss that even. And if that was a connection to talk about maybe wanting to help assist with garnering information regarding that. It's not just about this specific one topic, and if it's not a match. And I work with Dr. Wooten, and every time I have a meeting with Dr. Wooten, or every time I'm just around Dr. Wooten, I literally fill up like 3 pages of notebook paper with just random gold pieces of information about just anything. It's never just one thing. And that goes to say a lot for a lot of the professors and a lot of the other faculty. Just conversations on top of conversations. And it's never just the one thing. When I ask, like, can we have a meeting about this specific thing? It used to be, pre-COVID, it was coffee or lunch, or go to I'm in the computer lab, or I would go to the computer lab, and then it could have been swing by their office and you end up having a 45-minute conversation about something, how to do this specific program. And, now it's all like this, but adapt and overcome.
Well, definitely. Thank you all so much. You've been very helpful.
Great. Do we have any other questions for our panel? All right, well, I may let them go. I will say that sometimes we do have prospective applicants who really want to speak with a student, and that's something that we could feel out as a possibility, so that if you wanted to have more of an individual conversation, we can try to see if there's availability to do that. I can't commit the students right now, just so you know. That wouldn't be, I won't do that ahead of time, but that's something that we might be able to facilitate for you, so that you can ask any private questions that you'd rather, that this doesn't work out well for. But guys, thank you so much for coming. And I will send you an email as well, just following up. Now for our prospective applicants, I will stay on here a few more minutes to see if we have any other questions that we can answer. We've got 2 minutes left, so I'll just say goodbye to our current students. I know you have a busy afternoon, and I appreciate you all making time for this.
Thank you. Feel free to email me. My email is over there. Bye.
Excellent. So we've got some emails there if you want to make a connection. Thank you so much.
I do have a question for you.
Great.
Because there's so many applicants, let's say that you don't get picked the first time around. So how do you persist on the following year, or how do you go about that?
So that's a good conversation. And one thing to say about the number of applicants is that that's a rotating group of people who are oftentimes applying to other programs. So each student finds their fit. And so even though we only have a certain number of slots, most of our applicants are considering other programs. And so there will just be a natural fit that we find works out over time. So something to consider. For our own program, it's important to keep in conversation with the doctoral coordinator, so me, and then you know, our coordinator in the fall as well, to be able to have that discussion about applying in a previous year. We have definitely had successful applicants who did not come in one year and came in another year for different reasons. And sometimes it works out better for the students. Sometimes it wasn't a fit the first year. And I'm happy to talk with you as well about applications, strengthening applications in terms of thinking about applying in another year. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I'll definitely be talking to you.
Perfect. Great. I look forward to it. I look forward to it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being here. Other questions? And we are at 3 o'clock, so you are welcome to leave. Marcus, I did not mean to cut you off. I apologize.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, we are at 3 o'clock. I know many of you have tight schedules, and I want to be respectful of your time. So I am really grateful for you coming. I am going to stay on here. This is a priority for me. And so if you have questions, I'm here to answer those. We're going to keep the recording going. So if for those of you who want to follow up for that recording later, you can reach out to me by email.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to put my email in the box here. And I'm trying not, there we go. There it is to everyone. So please reach back out to me. That is literally my job right now, as well as something that I feel passionate about. So I look forward to hearing from you.
Well, that was actually my question. Will you be forwarding us an email in regards to receiving the recording, or do we just need to reach out to you?
I can email out our group. We're not posting it publicly, so it won't be necessarily on the webpage, but you are welcome to do that either way, to reach out to me, and I can get you access to the recording, or I can also email it out to all of our attendees who registered for the group today. So I think I'll go that route, and then you just ignore that if you don't need to have the recording.
Okay. And my other question is, I know we spoke, it was mentioned earlier about folks working in the field, probably right after their MSW or what other field they may be in. Is that part of the application process, the curriculum vitae, or is there, because I haven't seen the application as of yet. I was just wondering.
Yes, so the the graduate school's website, which they're the website where you submit the information. And if you have any issues finding that, or please feel free to reach out to me by email and I can quickly send you some links. On there, there's a place to upload either a resume or a CV. A CV would be that academic style that tends to be longer, and then of course a resume, but either format, and that's where you can highlight some of that work. You could also reflect on it in your personal statement. But we have had successful applicants who have not done 2 years after an MSW. So it depends on you as an individual how you want to incorporate that in.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're so glad to have you here today.
Yes.
Any other
Hi, Dr. C. It's Juno Davenport.
Yes, hi, Juno.
I had a question. I was only able to really attend for the first hour. I know you said that we could request a recording, but and I'm not sure if you touched on this earlier, and I do apologize. Is there another like document or a list of different, like you said, the future opportunities or anything that we could have access to as well?
So you will have, one thing that I will be doing is I will be following up about the recording. I have to go to another meeting this afternoon, but after that, I'm going to be following up with you in the next 24 hours about the recording as well as the additional opportunities. Those opportunities are focused on a smaller group discussion with a faculty member about their research, similar to our panel today. But that component will also include an opportunity for you to talk about your research area and for there to be a shaping process. That's meant to be something that's supportive of you as you're developing your application. So I will be in touch. It's good to see you.
It's nice seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you again.
I do have a question.
Thank you. It was great meeting all of you. We do remember this and we're glad to have you here.
So I have a question about the international students requirement about the language. So for those who are currently in the MSW program, I know the scores are just valid for 2 years. So we have to submit new scores for the PhD program, or how that works.
So there can be unique circumstances when a student is currently in a US MSW program. That requirement is a graduate school one, and so that would be something that we would do on an individual basis. So if you'd like to follow up with me, we have had gone through this before, and I sort of would like to get some more information that would be between you and I. But it is a good question. There are unique circumstances, particularly for students who are finishing an MSW here in the US.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
you. Yeah, I look forward to talking with you.
Thank you.
Or another master's degree here in the US, but US-based education. All right. Any other? I know many of you are probably just waiting on to see if there are going to be any other questions, and so I will just ask to see if anyone else has another question for me, or we will shut it down. It's Friday afternoon, and I want to be respectful of your time.
No, thank you. That was very helpful and informational, and I will resume looking at faculty bios and reaching out to more. And I did reach out to Nikki. We're planning something for hopefully Monday or Tuesday. So.
That's great. Good, good. That feels like a good conversation. I think that'll move you forward. And it was really nice to see you on here and make that connection again.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming. Please reach out to me. I look forward to talking with you about this process. So thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us.
This is a priority for us as a college, and our students are very important to us. And so we want to make sure that you have the information you need to make a good decision.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.